Have a good one.
Good, thank you. Sorry for the delay, just getting all the mics and all the setups. Well, welcome everyone. I'm super excited to welcome you all. As Sam said, I'm Toby Beauchamp. I'm the managing editor of Web3 and Learn at CoinDesk, and I am super enthusiastic about AI and creators, and I'm just gonna get right into it because we have a lot to talk about. So I'm gonna ask our guests to go in order. Just introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and how AI is involved in your work.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Josie Bellini. I've been a crypto artist since 2017. And last year, I launched a project called Cyber Brokers, which I'm the founder and CEO of. And we use AI every day in our workflow. Everyone on our team has ChatGPT Pro. Our devs have Google Copilot. And we've been really able to harness AI as a force multiplier for everything that we create.
Hi, I'm Jiabao Li, artist, designer, and professor at UT Austin. I use AI in all my workflow, like creating art. I'm interested in interspecies co-creation, human co-create with non-human species like animals, plants, mycelium, artificial intelligence. I also run a company called Endless Health, where we provide full loop health tracking, and we use AI as health coach, both the AI side and also like with the future with like deepfake. We could have Rihanna or The Rock to tell you eat better and do more exercise.
And my name is Jeff Nicholas. I'm Executive Creative Director for Warp Sound. We are an AI music systems company. So I work with AI every day on the music side, where we create systems that collaborate with artists and that create music, that compose music in real time. And then as an artist, as a creative director myself, I'm using everything from ChatGPT to Midjourney to, I mean, you name it in my process in some way. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, amazing, thanks. And I think that just to sort of start, like how have you integrated or changed your process based on the use of AI, and how has that sort of informed the decision making you're doing? And we'll go the other direction. So Jess, since you were just talking.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, coming from where we sit, 4 years ago when we started Warp Sound, or Authentic Artists, the parent company, no one wanted to talk to us about creative AI. That wasn't a thing, and it was really difficult to get any kind of traction. And so what's happened over time, you know, the way it's impacted our workflow, we've been working with AI, we've been training and we've been building these tools, but we haven't had some of the other tools like ChatGPT, the LLMs, or Midjourney, some of the image generation tools. So as a creative director who is tasked with creating virtual artists, finding ways to take our AI music and put it out in the world, these tools have changed my workflow. Everything from, you know, ChatGPT helping with marketing copy, or ChatGPT helping with generative art scripts, to creating, you know, starting point imagery through Midjourney and others. So what's really interesting about it is it's definitely leveled up our ability to get things done as a small startup. There are big caveats too, and so I am very much a cheerleader for AI. I work for an AI company, but also there's a lot going on. There's a lot of risk.
Yeah, and we'll get back to that, but first, just to sort of talk about how things have changed since.
Yeah, ranging from small things like writing an email, writing grants, and to more creative side, like writing a script for a film, coming up with the basic storyboarding, and then animate them, and also putting from 2D to 3D. That whole pipeline has changed. I'm also interested in design the back end, the front end of the interface that has AI on the back end to make it more transparent.
Our process has definitely changed a lot. We went from, you know, working with different voice actors to read our audio and have all of our entire chapters and stories in audio form. And now we're working with the same voice actors to train their voices to be able to read the audio through an AI tool. We're using AI we've actually created a lot of different AI bots specifically on our data set, our artwork, to create new art for us, to take 2D to 3D, to take 3D to rigged and animating. So we're using it in a lot of different ways.
That's super interesting, and I think you just naturally sort of keyed into the voice training thing, and we were talking about it backstage. So, we've all sort of seen recently, the Drake Weekend collab, and now Jiabao, you recently talked with Grimes, who just announced she would give 50% of any AI-created thing. So sort of, speak a little bit about the Grimes talk that you just...
Yeah, we had a conversation with Grimes at UT Austin School of Design Creative Technology 2 days ago, Monday night, and she talked about, she's happy to split 50% of the AI creation, use her voice, and emphasize on this loss of gatekeeping in the art world, like open source art, and that create a lot of exciting possibilities. Like, you could license your voice, you could license your face, maybe even your body. What does the capital world in that world looks like? Maybe totally change the streaming or subscription system. And yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, and I think, Jeff, from your point of view, from a music point of view, I think, there's been sort of, there was a pushback, obviously, from the labels on that thing, but there's also sort of a ton of just natural and curiosity and people really enthusiastic about it. But sort of, what is your point of view on those sort of, taking an artist, a living artist whose work is out there, and training something and then creating something new? Where do you think that falls, sort of ethically? And
yeah, I mean, there's a big ethical challenge there, right? And I think when it comes to someone like Grimes, you're talking about someone who has said, please do this, right? So she's given her permission to say, use my voice in whatever way, and we'll work it out on the back end, basically. When you think about someone like The Weeknd or Drake, they had no, as far as we know, they had no permission given for that, and that is essentially a deep fake. And what is the ethical consideration there when you're using someone's voice? That's their voice, but also there are no copyright protections around someone's voice. And some might say, well, it's on the internet, it's out in the public world, and so all of that stuff can be used in different ways. I fall on the side of it of I don't believe that we should be using people's voices without their permission or their work without their permission in that way, because that truly is just a deep fake at that point. But I love what Grimes is doing. Grimes is saying, let's get collaborative, let's make new things. And I think that's a way forward for artists that's really powerful.
Great. And Josie, I think, we talked about before, your data set is all trained on your own things. And how did you make that decision? And sort of, what's your point of view on tools like Midjourney or any of the stable diffusion trade things, which have taken large, huge libraries of copyrighted material to create these data sets and models?
Yeah, before I get into that, I think right now, there's never been a better time in history to be a content creator. To have a media and entertainment company where you can use the power of AI, at least in the way that we're doing it with training our own data sets and things like that. We can use this as a force multiplier for everything that we do and make everything we produce cheaper, faster, better. And also with the intersection of NFTs, which is the greatest way to monetize in history for a creator. So I think there's a lot of positive, but I definitely understand I'm an artist. I have a lot of artist friends that are posting on Twitter daily an AI with a slash through it. Do not use my images for AI. So I definitely think there needs to be that regulation around AI to not infringe on copyright issues and things like that. But I think for a creator and for people who have the permissions to be using what they are in their data set, it's going to be a tremendous force.
I think we, as humans, we have this idea that things are either good or bad, and we use that idea of something being good or something being bad to sort of orient ourselves in the world and say, okay, that thing is good, so now I can go do it, and that thing is bad, so I'm going to stay away from it. But the world we live in is so much more complex than that, and AI is one of those lightning rod moments that shows us just how complex that is. There's so much interesting, you might say good, that can come out of it. There's also a ton of, you might say, bad wrapped up in that around the ethical concerns of how art's being used in training data, as an example on the creative side. And I think we have to kind of look at it and go, how are we going to use this and empower people to use it in ways that enrich our lives, knowing that this disruption moment is going to get really, really, really messy. And we're going to see a lot of that deep fake, that sort of weird use case where we're like, I don't like that. but that doesn't mean we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
There's no roadmap yet. Like, we're making it up as we go.
Right.
So yeah, it's a lot of our responsibility as creators that are using AI to set the tone on how we use it and how we think others should use it as well, I think.
Exactly.
And how regulation can catch up. Usually they come up much later than the technology goes. Like even the earlier days, the social media, attention economy, still catching up on that.
Well, and I look at the music industry. I've been in the music industry for 20 years now, and when I look at what's happened with streaming or what happened with file sharing, P2P file sharing, the music industry is a great example of an industry saying, that's never going to be a thing. We don't want to deal with that when it came to LimeWire and P2P file sharing. Then all of a sudden it decimated the music industry and they had to figure out a way to embrace it because we all listen to digital music. And so streaming came out of that and regulation came out of that later. But that disruption moment was a big moment for that industry, and it has been for many others.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that flex point often happens when new technologies emerge and people have this resistance towards the authenticity of the original ways. And you've seen that, I think, with digital photography versus regular photography, or, my father was in radio and he used to do like reel-to-reel tape splicing, and then he moved to computers. But there was a moment in that flex where people were really concerned. And the sort of, I'm going to quote Dave Grohl on this. He said, in this age of technology where you can manipulate anything, how do we retain that human element? So I think that's the part that we have to sort of figure out. And how do you sort of, make sure that it's still human and not just this? Because I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind as creators and artists is that it's not a computer just spitting out these things on its own. There's a spark that we start. So how do you sort of address that? Whoever.
I'll start with this one. There probably already are farms creating incredible images and music and videos. We're already seeing them online. So there is going to be very, very high quality assets that are used. But what is the content behind it? Who is producing it? Like, in the age where anything can be created with AI, it really comes down to community and brand and how you actually manage those things on the back end, how you're fostering the right communities, because we're going to be able to make anything and people are going to farm that engagement, the crap out of it. So I really think the brands and communities that you build around whatever you're doing, whether you're just an independent creator or a company, are going to be the things that actually last a long time and get those, like, the fan base around you.
Yeah, I'm actually more interested in the non-human part to that question, because I'm interested in interspecies co-creation, and there are a lot of new AI research that are trying to understand the language of animals and even try to communicate with them, like the Israel in Tel Aviv, this researcher trying to understand the bats' language and communicate back to them. So maybe—
Did you say bats?
Bats, yeah. We're in Austin, the bats city. And maybe there's one day that this AI could talk to the animals without us knowing what's going on. And like artists like Alexandra Daisy Ginsburg also use AI to try to help us make gardens that are good for pollinators, not for human. So there's an interesting world there. There's also, like these days, I'm thinking, what if when we go on extinction, AI could help us to carry on the human history and our civilization and telling to the next species coming up.
That's really like hopeful and like positive.
Well, and we're on a panel about AI art and the creator's dilemma, right? And so I think that, or AI and the creator's dilemma, but I kind of position that as art, as creative. There's so much that's happening in the AI space that's not creative in art, right? It's whether it's the ChatGPTs, whether it's research, whatever. So I think when we take our narrow view that we're talking about here on the panel, there's an interesting argument. Like I've worked with Dave quite a bit actually, and over the years, and I love his point of view. And also, what is authenticity when it comes to human creation? What does that actually mean? Because the AI systems that we're developing are created by humans. In our case, are created by musicians, and in other cases are created by developers and other artists. And so there is a human touch to the whole process of that pipeline, from the creation of the models, the creation of the training data, and then the prompts that are being used to create that art. And so I just kind of look at it like that whole idea of going from, Bob Dylan, from the acoustic guitar to the electric guitar, or when we went into Pro Tools and you could get out of a studio and you could create music at home, or you go from the paintbrush to the digital canvas. All of those things, the whole conversation has always been, well, that's going to destroy human creativity, or it's going to take the soul from it. And the reality is, like, there's a lot of soul in the AI output. Just by the nature, it didn't create itself, right?
Yeah, that's a solid point, and definitely something I want to touch on, because we are creating these things, and we're creating it with the same flaws in a lot of cases that we have in the world. So, how do we sort of keep aware and know that we are, I think there was a study where they asked Midjourney to do selfies of different cultures, and they made them all look like Western white people taking a selfie, which is not culturally appropriate. So how do we sort of build better AI that is more inclusive and more ethically ethically aware AI, but you get my meaning. And I know, Jiabao, you have a point of view on this.
Yeah, so data collection should need to be very diverse and inclusive. For example, when I try to write script about glaciers, including Inupiat culture, there's very little there, because there's very little written documentation in a lot of the indigenous culture there. So data collection, and then transparency on what's going on the back. Can we design interface that can tell you actually what are the data being drawn and how these algorithms work to break the black box problem? And also in the education world, higher education need to adapt fast to know what should we teach students and what we shouldn't now. Like things like manual drafting or tutorials on how to use software. You can learn this from anywhere. But I think we should have more course on like ethical discussion about AI and technology in general. Have designers co-create or collaborate with engineers, and have more thinking about these issues.
I think in those examples, like the ancient civilizations that appear in selfies that are smiling at the camera and all look like, essentially white people, part of it is the prompting, and part of it is the way that it's being used, because it's not a human that has a lot of context. It actually just has a bunch of information that it can access, and most of the information it's accessing is exactly what you just said. And so we can work on prompting, we can work on training data to make sure that that pool is richer, and that the end product is it pulls from the pieces of the training data that aren't that, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with the prompting comment as well. I mean, we do a lot of prompts where the negative prompts are as important as the actual prompt itself. So I would argue that if we're talking about indigenous communities that don't take selfies, I probably wouldn't even make that prompt, and it would be part of the negative set. Or if we are trying to get that, if the indigenous culture typically doesn't smile or typically faces a certain way, those would be things that we would need to build into the data set. And I would argue that we need to get more people that are interested in this sharing that information and giving that information so we can train properly. And I think as more people use it, as we get further down the road, it will become a lot more robust in that way.
I think that's great. I think the prompting thing is a really interesting point of view, especially because it is coming from that prompt. And how do you sort of work with those negative prompts? I think that's a really interesting point. That most people think of it like you just throw in some words and you're like, make me a pope wearing Balenciaga, and you get this amazing picture and everyone shares it. But like, what else do people need to know?
Yeah, negative prompting is really interesting. I mean, we work a lot with it where we are trying to build a certain character who has an attitude in our story, who has a identity of her own, and she doesn't smile often, and she's always pretty sassy, and she stands in certain poses. So like, we have negative prompts. We don't want this character doing this in any of the scenes. We don't want the character standing in this way. And I mean, that's just a very like small example, but it could become a lot bigger, where you can make those things more accurate.
This starts to go to that disruption moment. Sorry to cut you off. Okay. This starts to go to that disruption moment where all of a sudden, and we'll talk about the job piece, but there's a whole new realm of possibility for prompt architects and people that are really sort of technical folks who can start to craft ways to use the AI in different ways. We don't quite know exactly where that's going to go as an industry, but we're already seeing a lot of that pop up, and that's what happens with disruption, right? All of a sudden, the old ways of doing things sort of go away. You look at Uber and the taxi, the new ways of doing things open up a lot of opportunity, and problem, but that's the way of the world. That's innovation.
And not only the prompt engineering job, there's also still tons of people like in developing countries tagging all the data and knowing that after they tag it really well, their job is going to be replaced. And they have super lower wage on that. Just like how internet revolutionized the traditional industry, now it's revolutionized the traditional internet industry, and now people on the backside is becoming the tagging part.
Yeah, so to keep going on that, I think there is a common concern, which is that the AI is going to take our jobs. And I think you're both saying there are new jobs, but how do you sort of assuage people's fears in that regard?
I don't assuage people's fears. The AI is going to take some of our jobs. It is also going to offer some really interesting new opportunities for new jobs. But I will say this, on the art side, technical artists who are there to do production technical tasks, that job is going to go away. It just is. And so the hope is that those folks are able to work within this new system. If they're just technical, great, let's find technical applications for how they can use those skills in conjunction with AI. For creatives, all of a sudden, though, it offers so much new possibility, and it also lifts up a lot of people who maybe didn't think that they could create in different ways and gives them a new creative tool so that they can be creative. Do we want a world that's full of just purely creatives and then AI? I don't think so. I don't think we work that way as humans. But, so it is scary. There's a lot that's going to go away.
Yeah, I think the best get better and the mediocre got pushed down. I'm telling my students, if you are going to continue using Pinterest board to come up with ideas, then you're going to be outdated. And I think a lot of in design, like UI, UX, product rendering, a lot of these are being taken over. And I think a lot of artists trying to push the tool, AI is becoming another tool brush. Sometimes the medium is the message, and really try to push the edge, the limitation of the tool to make the art.
Yeah, great. Josie, you have any thoughts?
No, I agree with Jeff and Jiabao. I agree with both.
Yeah, I think it's a transformational time, and that's just what, you sort of have to figure out the way that you space. But I do think that, we have to remember it comes from original art. It's not trained on nothing. It's trained on the thing. And you see it even in the way that it's replicating itself in real time. So, there was that Balenciaga poke, and then there was a AI deepfake Balenciaga video of Harry Potter on the thing, and then there were 1 million of those. But somebody had that first spark that was using an AI in a novel way.
I think one of the interesting things is there's two parts to that. One is the genie's out of the bottle, right? It's not going back in the bottle. We're not going to say, wait a minute, no more use of AI. It's just not going to happen. But two, provenance and blockchain and things like the technology that we're here, overall to talk about becomes really, really important. Not only for the creator, the original human creator, but also if you're collaborating with an AI to say, I made it with that AI, that's going to become important at some point, because there is going to be a flood of things that are copycat and just sort of like, bad form and, whatever. So I think the convergence and why we're here on this stage, right, is the convergence of blockchain tech, AI, sort of Web3, the new internet, whatever you want to call it, is what is going to allow this to become a thing that we can use as a tool, long term, and that provides the authenticity piece.
The credit part is interesting. When we talk about interspecies cocreation, our work co-create with animals, we always try to credit the animals and ask them, did you have consent with them, and what do they get out of that? And we found a lot of things also work with AI. Like anything about animal, you can just replace the word with AI, and you can ask all the questions as well. And maybe like we need to credit, okay, this is the artist, the AI, and all the data that the AI have jotted on, all the history, all the civilization back there.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's really interesting. I was talking to somebody last night about this, the credit of AI, the credit of the way that it's being produced, instead of obfuscating that it wasn't or just saying that it was and giving no credit to those involved. I think it is really important.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking, like at CoinDesk, we've been exploring AI, like how can we use it and how can we think, and I think one of the things we decided is if we're going to use it in any way, we're going to credit and acknowledge that it's part of the process in some way or another. So whether that's using generative images or like I used, one of the large language models to help research an article I wrote, and then they got a credit as CoinDesk bot as part of my co-author. So I think that's important to be obvious and say, like, I wrote most of this, but I also took some advice on the thing. And I think it's nice and it's empowering for people, especially like I'm not a visual artist, but I can use these prompts to sort of generate things that I have in my mind, but I could never produce. And I think there's an opportunity there for growth within the creative industry, for expansion. Like I'm not a musician, I'm not, I write, but I can use these tools now. So like, do you see that among your peers or contemporaries sort of taking that? Like I think you were talking about everyone is using ChatGPT to write emails.
Yeah, I mean, we use it a lot. We also have, what's been really just sort of eye-opening for us is we have custom bots trained on all of our data set and our art, and we've actually let our community have access to that. So we've simplified it into a Discord bot for people where they can come and create their own content around our brand and around their characters that we've trained it on. So they own this character, they own the IP of what they have, and now they don't have to be an artist. They can create comic books, with the comics are actually written by AI, the images are generated by AI. They have this seed of an idea, and they can actually make it happen, which for us is a huge thing for marketing and just visibility, is you have now all of these fans that have been collectors, but now they are your fanatics. They're that next level where they feel like they have created with what they own, and they have that much more attachment to it. We have people in our community that are role-playing as their characters on Twitter and have their own accounts and are creating brands around their characters, all with the power of the custom AI that we've built.
That's super fun. Yeah. Jeff, do you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm an eternal optimist. And in the grand scheme of things, like on the continuum, I'm like, these are the sort of ways that I think we will use AI, and we'll use new tools that come after AI over time to do really incredible things and empower people who weren't empowered before. I think I always look at, you look at the film industry's depiction of what happens with AI and how the human race gets stamped out, and all of the Skynet, whatever. And I just don't believe that. I just fundamentally believe we are like a race or a species of survivors, and as the human species, and we will continue to survive. But we are going to face challenges and use these new tools in really cool ways too.
I love that, and that's a good place to start sort of wrapping up our fine thing. So you're very optimistic. How are you feeling about where will we be in 1 year or 5 years, and what are you most excited about? Just briefly.
Man, I have no idea.
All right,
I have no idea. I think where we will be is there's going to be a lot of pain in the mid-level, like sort of job market, and creators are going to have to get really are going to have to face that. And I also think there's going to be an incredible amount of sort of renaissance of art and new ways for people to create. Great.
Jiabao?
I'm excited to see the new aesthetics, new form all coming up out of this. And excited to see a lot of the pixel pushing, paper pushing work disappear.
Josie?
I think we're not even going to be able to imagine now what will be in 5 years. 5 years ago, people were writing books that AI would first replace factory workers. So we don't know yet, but I think the power of NFTs and blockchain technology combined with AI is going to be huge. And for me, it's never been a better time to be a creator.
Agree, and that's a great place to end it. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank everyone here. I hope you enjoyed us as well.
Thank you.